Today we are talking about the top 5 solo laners, and this one was a piece of work. Now, if you're not aware, I usually base my top 5 lists on the SPL statistics that you can find on Blue's Twitter, the link down below, and then go through the statistics on Smite Pro builds and just balance things out a little bit, compare, look who's played where, how they're built, how successful they are, and then look at the games as well. And out of that, I kind of form the top 5. So there's a lot of statistical work going into that. And the reason why this one was so terrible in that regard was because so many solo laners right now are also played in other roles. There's a ton of flex solos. And I think from a perspective of what the role offers and what the game offers, that's a great thing. We have a lot of variety that way. But from the perspective of somebody trying to just figure out the best 5 gods in that regard, it makes things very hard because you have to make a few decisions as well. So in this context, we are not only going to talk about the solo laners, but also about builds for them. Now, before we go into the top 5, in this case, it's especially important to talk about the gods who didn't make it, because there might be quite a few of those gods that you may be thinking, hey, this one should probably be on the list. Why are they not there? And why is someone else there? And how did this end up happening? So, a few names that you will not find on the top 5. First one being Odin. Odin is a good solo laner, and Odin was banned a ton in the SPL. He wasn't played, but he has an extremely high ban rate. But he is mostly played in jungle and support, so I don't really feel him being one of the solo laners would be justified here. The next one is Terra. Similar thing here, she also has pretty good stats overall. She has a very high pick rate and a solid win rate, but at the end of the day, she is played way more in support than she is in solo. And the same story is even more true for Athena, one of the most picked and most banned gods at the moment, with a 97.81% ban rate, though only a 51% win rate, surprisingly. But either way, Athena being played in solo, sometimes being played in support more, and then even sometimes played in jungle, is just not really an archetypical solo laner. That does not mean that she's bad in solo at all, and she's definitely a strong pick in any role you can get her at the moment. But when we're strictly looking at the best performing solos based on their solo stats only, then she's not quite up there. And then there's Amaterasu, also a similar situation. Very, very strong pick at the moment, but mostly a support pick, even though she can also be successful in solo. Then we have a few honorable mentions for the warriors, being Nike, Kukulin, and Bellona. All of them have shown performance here and there, not always, but all of them also didn't get that many picks, so they're not really that highly valued and more of niche situational picks. Especially Nike has been picked a lot lately, but it's just not quite up there yet. And then we have Kuzenbo, who also had a solid amount of picks, but just doesn't bring the win rate. He's currently sitting at a 41 win rate across the split, 41%, so not quite on the same level as others. Now, the reason why many of these warriors simply don't get picked is because you can either go into one of the actual top 5 gods, or you can go into one of the flex picks options if they're available and you were considering to maybe put one in support, but then you're like, you know, I have this god, I might put someone else in support and put them in solo instead, because they do decently there as well, and you'll often choose that over other picks. It's also surprising to me that even at this point we haven't seen a lot of AA gods yet, even with Berserker's Shield being relatively strong still. They don't really show up in the SPL just yet. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if they're more held back as picks for Worlds and as a strategy that will show up then, but for now we look at the stats that we have available at this point. And that brings us to the top 5. One thing I'm going to do a little bit differently is I'm not going to use footage for every single god here, because it would have been a lot of work to just get that together. When the information remains the same, forgive me for that one, please. I hope you can get the information here that you need anyways, without having the corresponding background footage for each god. Number 5. With this one I was the most skeptical, so this is definitely the most wonky of them. A lot of the more flex gods have way more picks than him, but he has shown to have a very strong performance overall in the split, even though in the last week he only had 1 game. And that is Achilles. Now, why did Achilles make the list? He has a total of 15 games played, and he won 11 out of those games, which brings him to a 73.33% win rate. There are very few gods that actually ended up with a higher win rate, and the only one that really did it consistently in a few games was Xingqian with 8 games and 6 wins, but 8 games on the other hand is such a low number that it's really hard to put it in comparison. And he may be the one competing with Achilles for this slot, but at the end of the day, I think Achilles does things a little bit more consistent, and Xingqian also didn't get much more success in the last week either. Achilles is also very flexible and can make use of a lot of things that other gods can't make in the same way necessarily, and he is also the only warrior on this list. As to why Achilles makes this list, he's not only a decent pressure god and his nerfs kinda helped him a little bit more across the game overall, but he's also a god that can really work with a lot of things. He has a passive that gives him basically free protections, and as such he can flex a bit more with his item strategies, he can go into more aggressive playstyles, and he will still be impactful, especially through the fact that he will always have that execute available, which doesn't depend on having built any items to support that. Other high aggression solos just fall off a little bit more, whereas Achilles will always do a decent amount of aggressive work. With most other solos being a lot more passive at the moment and not having that much pressure, it also allows him to pressure very, very early on and also rotate out very early, go for heavy aggression, as he has the mobility to do so as well, and that is just something that works very well together for him. As a quick note on anyone's build here really, these builds are just examples. In solo you will have to counter your opponent. It's extremely important that you do and not just build a cookie cutter build. It's one of the main parts of solo. So if you want more information on builds, I will link some videos down below from FineOK, who goes all in depth with all solo laners at the moment, which will help you a lot in that regard. But for a basic idea of how he could, for example, be built with high aggression, would be something like Warrior's Blessing into Warrior Tabe, then Gladiator Shield, or you could even go Berserker Shield on him, as FineOK pointed out, then Runic Shield or Genji's Guard for either more aggression, more cooldown, Void Shield, Pestilence and Spirit Rope. You can tell there's a lot of damage going on here. You can also go into more CDR. You can even go a bit more AA focused. He's very flexible in his playstyle. Number 4 goes to Artio. Artio is one of those gods that you can flex into support as well, but overall she seems to have a decent amount of solo presence still, and she does very well there. In my opinion, she's still a better solo than she is a support as well. She brings a decent amount of win rate as well as pick rate at the moment, 57.89% win rate, and just allows to sustain very well in lane, have definitely strong impact across the board, not only in trades but also in team fights. She's often built with Blink now, or almost exclusively, in order to have more aggression with the Blink stun combo, and then she has a lot of utility for her teammates as well at the same time. The cripple is obviously very strong and everything that comes with it. Her strong sustain means that no of the lower aggression solos that seem to dominate at the moment can really bully her out, and she brings that late game impact that you typically want from a solo laner right now. A build example for her would be Guardian's Blessing, CDR Boots, Breastplate of Valor or Voidstone, depending on which one you want to build first if you want to counter someone in the lane. Then Pestilence, for example, to counter anti-heal, Mid-Guardian Mail to slow the opponent, and then Mystical Mail to get some late game AoE tick damage off to have a little bit more impact that way. In spot number 3, we have another god that is flexible but mostly played and successful in solo, and that is Baron Samedi. An outright ridiculous pick and ban rate of also 85.4%, 55% win rate, also not too bad. Just an overall very strong pick. With Samedi, it's just about his team utility, but also the fact that he can do a lot of damage for a solo laner, and just he's overall such a good pick and probably needs more nerfs. His immediate early game isn't the exact best, so you can even opt into a Guardian's Blessing early on if it helps you survive in the solo lane, or you can go into Magic's Blessing for a little bit more aggression. That's up to you. Then you want to have CDR Boots, and then again you could go a combo like Breastplate of Valor and Void Stone. Then you want to have Lotus Crown in your build at some point typically. Maybe, for example, finish it off with some more damage. Ethereal stuff would be an option. Spear of the Magus or Gem of Isolation. There are a lot of options. You can even go into more tankiness as well if you want to. He's really flexible there. Then spot number 2. This is one that will probably surprise quite a few of you because she didn't get that many picks yet, and that is Changa. Changa has a very high ban number, so to speak, with 27, but only 14 picks. Out of these 14 picks, however, she has won 9 games, bringing her to a 64.29% win rate. So she's a little bit worse performance-wise than Achilles, but she's getting a lot more bans. She's valued a lot more as an anti-heal pick, as a counter pick, as a survival pick, as a team fight pick. She just brings all that stuff. Changa is the very definition of a late game god, and her biggest issue are high aggression solo lanes. We don't have many of those right now, so situation is pretty good for her. And that's why she can really thrive in this environment of getting her farm safely and then doing her job. An example build for her would be Mage's Blessing into CDR Boots, Lotus Crown, then Genji's Guard. If you are against the physical first, you can also swap this around once again. and then a Breastplate of Valor. At this point you want to get rid of your Mage's Blessing because you already have enough CDR. And then, for example, finish it up with a Rod of Asclepius and a Void Stone, or if you want more survivability, you can go into Magi's Cloak, as it's called now, or whatever else you want really. Also very flexible towards the end of the build. And then we have the undisputed solo lane god. A lot of picks, and all of them are for solo. 52 picks is split, and that god is Sobek with a 57.69% win rate. This guy is just the definition of what makes solo lane now. He has self-sustain, he is tanky, he's got a bit of aggression that he can work with if the enemy makes a mistake, but really he's just there to farm until he has a big impact in late game, and Sobek with his pluck and his ultimate will most certainly have that for every single team fight. As such, he gets the spot number 1 here, being the most picked and a very successful one. A build for him would be something like Guardian's Blessing into CDR boots, then Void Stone, Breastplate or Breastplate Voidstone, Hide of the Urchin for more tankiness in late game, Magi's Blessing and Mantle of Discord, or Spirit Robe or whichever else you need in that particular situation, not including counters that you may have to build. That's it for the top 5 solos. You guys asked for more top 5 videos, so you'll get some. And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and ring the bell. And other than that, see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.